Good morning, everyone. Today is February 10th, 2021. It's 8 a.m. Actually, it's 8:01. So it's time to get started with our second Wednesday safety session. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Very happy to be here with you all. My name is Carlos Carrillo. I'm the Executive Director of the South Florida chapter of the Associated General Contractors of America. We are broadcasting live today from Safe Right Solutions Training Center in lovely Doral, Florida. And I want to thank the Safe Right team for allowing us to use their facility as we have been since August of last year when the pandemic hit. So we're very grateful to them for allowing us to have a place to come and broadcast our safety sessions to you all. I also want to recognize the team at Kelly Cronenberg for all of their help. We've got Tim and Cedric behind the scenes running the show. So thank you to Tim and Cedric for helping us, and Kelly Cronenberg for being generous with their assistance. Before we get started today, we're able to do this because of the assistance of our sponsors who give us space and technical assistance, but also because of our title sponsor, Milwaukee Tools. So before we get going, I want to give Milwaukee Tools a chance to go ahead and say hello to our audience today on their behalf. As always, everybody's favorite Dallas Cowboys fan, Uriel Soto. Uriel, are you there?
Hey, good morning, Carlos. All right. Well, just want to go ahead and say on behalf of Milwaukee, again, thank you for continuing to put the safety committee on, bringing the safety professionals in the Dade and the Broward area together, sharing best practices as we're getting back to some type of normalcy. And then looking forward as Milwaukee, one of the things that we want to continue to put out there for you all is new and innovative products that keep that job site safe and productive. Most importantly, we do have our MX Fuel line out there, which is light heavy equipment emitting no emissions, allowing your guys to work safer in an enclosed area. And then looking forward to the safety week that we're going to be having in May. We're definitely going to be looking for some members to collaborate with not only in Dade and Broward, but also in the Palm Beach area, and go out there and support Safety Week, bring awareness to some of the hazards on the job site. So if there's something that we could definitely help you all out with, or you want to collaborate with Milwaukee Tool, definitely look forward to reach out to myself at uriel.soto@Milwaukee Tool. And that's pretty much all we had. I hope everybody stays safe out there and enjoy the rest of the week. Carlos, thank you for putting this on again.
Thank you, Uriel. Thank you guys for sponsoring. We appreciate your help and your assistance. Looking forward to seeing what you guys do for Safety Week, because last year when you guys did it, it was really cool. Some of the on-site stuff that you did, and you were able to share photos with us. So we appreciate that. Quickly, before we get moving, before we get to our guest, I just want to let you know that we now have a YouTube channel. So our move into the 21st century has been a slow one, but we are there, folks. So all of these second Wednesday safety sessions are now going to be available on our YouTube channel. We currently have November through January up, and we'll be putting on the rest of the past videos as we get time to edit them and put them on. So if you want to see that presentation that we had regarding OSHA reporting, you can see that. That was from last month. If you want to see our work that we had the state of OSHA with Condell Eastman, you can see that one as well. That is up as well. So when you get on YouTube, all you need to do is look up the South Florida AGC. You'll see our channel. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit that like button when you see our videos, please. If there's any additional functionality you think we can add to that, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. That being said, it's time to get the show on the road, guys. The Focus 4 is a familiar concept to most everyone, to all of you that are out there watching today. Today, we're going to take the Focus 4 concept and apply it to commercial construction insurance. You and your company spend a great deal of time and resources to control injuries and illnesses related to the OSHA Focus 4. Your companies also spend a lot of money for insurance, a lot. So understanding the Insurance Focus 4 will help you all save money, get better coverage terms, improve craft relationships, and improve owner relationships as well. You'll also achieve a more competitive bidding advantage. So our guest today, this month's presenter, is Mike Fredebeil. He is a CSP. He is North American leader of construction risk control for the Willis Towers Watson Corporation, the Willis Towers Watson construction practice. Prior to joining Willis in 2005, he was a senior construction technical consultant and manager with Liberty Mutual. Mike's primary responsibilities include safety management and risk control solutions for client owners, senior managers, risk managers, safety directors, and human resource professionals. Mike does it all. He also supports clients and Willis Towers Watson construction teams with risk assessments and potential coverage gaps. We are very excited to have him here with us today. And without further ado, Mike, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Carlos. Uh-oh, let's see. Okay, can you guys see that?
We can.
Great. Well, thank you, Carlos. And, you know, one of the pleasures of my career is working with the AGC. I work with Kevin Cannon in the national group. And Willis Towers Watson has been partners in safety with AGC for over 30 years. That's a long-term commitment. And the reason we do that is because we believe in the messaging that AGC is doing, and we also believe in preventing losses and accidents is the key to a successful program. I'm one of the CSEA finalist judges. We've done that for close to 20 years in the current format. Many of you have seen the best management practices that we put together every year as a result of the competition. And, you know, over the years, there's been close to 4,000. Since about the last 8 years, I started doing it in a different format where we had it by category for senior management, leadership, and support, and then risk analysis. So if you haven't seen that, Carlos there's a link at the end of my email that we can share that with you. But it's a pretty good document. I mean, all the 60 finalist competitors, I write down things they say. We have a team of AGC chapter people that help keep up with the things that they talk about. We do exit interviews, so it's really a good thing. One of the questions that I always ask the competition is about what we're going to talk about today. You know, what about trending? What are you doing other than worker safety in your companies to, you know, prevent, losses, and particularly in the different other coverage areas? So, and a lot of people are on that, but I would say a majority really don't think about that much. So when Carlos and I were talking about this presentation on Focus 4, I said, well, let's kind of think about, Focus 4 from a commercial insurance point of view. Our ultimate goal at Willis Towers Watson is to help contractors lower their total cost of risk. And we call it T4. And a lot of people, when you talk about your total cost of risk is your premium that you pay and the losses that you have. So again, very simply, our job is to help save you money and make sure that you have the right kinds of coverages. A lot of times, it's like sometimes your homeowner's policy and you have a water leak and you pull the policy out for the first time since you've had it in 20 years and you start reading through there and you find out there's not much covered, right? So same thing happens in commercial insurance. So we try to work with you and the insurance carrier to make sure that if you do have a loss, that it's going to be covered to the way that you expect it to be covered. So that's a big part of what we do. I spent a lot of time a few years back in South Florida. I worked primarily on the Port of Miami tunnel. I was in Miami probably for a whole week every 6 weeks. Also worked on the Brickell Center that is down there too. So I'm very familiar with South Florida, and it's a great place and a lot of really good stuff going on down there. And but anyway, that's kind of a little bit of my history. So trying to get it to change. Let's see. Okay. Hang on one second. Let me get this other thing out of the way. Okay. So we're all familiar with the Focus 4 hazards for construction: struck by, caught in, under, and between, falls from elevations, and electrocution. And I've got some information from two main carriers, large commercial carriers, Liberty Mutual and Zurich, and they did it for just the construction industry. And so the average cost for these types of OSHA Focus 4, I've kind of listed below there. So struck by, about 19,000, caught in under between 22.5, falls from elevations, 53,000, and then electrocutions, and these could be electrical contact too, but the average cost of claim was there. So, those are what we're very familiar with. There's been all kinds of information. We do a lot with it in our companies, but when I talk with clients, I try to get them to, yeah, these are the fatal things that happen here. But when you start talking about other things, it's kind of surprising. This next slide, and this is for a large contractor, and it's about 5.5 years of information. And it's kind of surprising when you look at the loss drivers. So fall to a lower level, is about 5 million. And these aren't just off the building. These are ladders, stairs, jumping ditches, things like that we don't typically think of. And just by the way, all of these falls right here, there were none from a height where a lanyard and a harness would come into play. The number 2 leading loss driver is, manual handling and overexertion. A lot of people, this isn't ergonomics. This is pushing, pulling, twisting and turning. And, I remember back in the day when this first started being looked at and became an issue, it was like people were faking, and people get aggravated when they have a manual handling injury because there's no blood, right? For that much money, you expect a little tiny cup of blood or something. So, but there's no blood. But they're cumulative over time. We started hurting our backs when we were jumping ditches on our bicycles when we were kids and all the other things. But, it's not usually a specific thing that causes it. It's just a cumulative thing. You've all heard about the guy leaning over to pick up a pencil and his back goes out. So as an industry, we got to look at this a little bit better. You see some initiatives, nothing hits the ground and some of these other things. But these claims here, when I left Liberty Mutual in 2005 and came to Willis, the average cost for a manual handling overexertion claim is about $7,500. And you can see, with the increased cost of medical and things like that, now this company does a really good job at controlling claims. So I'll show you some other stuff in a few minutes from the carrier specific to show you that. But the point is here is that for this particular contractor, 70% of their costs, and that's a big number, relate to those 3, falling on the same level, manual handling, and falls to a lower level. I was on a big hospital project yesterday, and I was with the superintendent. They're getting ready to pour a slab, and they were putting all the underground, things below the slab. And I asked him, I said, what is it? What are you really looking at here? He was overseeing the work, and I said, what's the number 1 type of loss type that you have? And he said, hands and gloves. And I said, what's your most expensive loss type? And he couldn't answer. And the thing is when you're focusing on the frequency rate and the incident rate, sometimes you miss these big cost numbers right here that come along. So, so we were standing there watching, and they had these little crossovers over the ditches that were built, and they were getting ready to do work down in there. So they took all the crossovers off. So the employees were just jumping over the ditch. And, he says, wow. And he went over and talked to him and told him to get, the planks back over. But, you could take this or something else. I used to take it and fold it up and put it in my pocket. And when I was talking to somebody about, slippery conditions or trash on the floor or whatever, they go, oh yeah, we'll just get another, waste receptacle. But I pull this out and show them the numbers. And, when you say the average cost for fall on the same level is like $14,000, it puts a different perspective on it. So again, when you think of the Focus 4 for workers' comp, you could add struck by and against, but that's a tough one. A lot of that is like, hitting your with a hammer or, those are more of the hand type injuries. But if you want to make a difference in your company, and for example, say you have an inspection system like, I don't know, Predictive Solutions or using Procore, whatever you're using, if 70% of your observations, your inspection observations don't deal with these 3 types of losses, you're missing the target. My little brain just thinks that way. So kind of look at what you're looking at. And I remember when predictive solutions first came out years ago, we had a big client here in Atlanta, and they said, hey, we're going to do it. You get a Palm Pilot and it's going to be real cool and everything else. And I said, can you print out, there was like, don't quote me, 32 categories. And I think there was like 230 different things they looked at. And so I had done an analysis for this contractor, and 70% of their losses were, manual handling and falling on the same level. And then I said, print it out for me. And I took my highlighter and I just went through and highlighted all the things related to, manual handling, overexertion, and falls on the same level. And out of the 232 things, guess how many dealt with those two things? And it was like 2. And when I was in the corporate leadership committee and mentioned that, I got a call the next day that said, hey, we need to add more stuff on here about manual handling and falls on the same level. So it's in industry, and we just need to have a little wider look to see, what that looks like. So, there's other lines of coverage, and right now workers' comp is always somewhat flat, when it comes to premium and things like that. But any of the coverages that have an excess component, like auto liability, usually it's, the primary limit is $1 million, or it could be 2 million. But then you have all these layers above that. So if you do hit a pedestrian, or you do have a bad claim, that you've got, an umbrella coverage that can cover it. So when you think of the Focus 4 for auto liability, the number one, which, naturally, pedestrians or cyclists. I mean, sometimes we're going down the road, and I ride a bike and a pedal bike, and, and sometimes we get aggravated with somebody on the road, but you just got to stay clear of them. A pedestrian and a cyclist is pretty much helpless. So as far as defending yourself against something like that, it's very, very hard to do. So as you can see from this national insurance statistics that I pulled this information from, the average cost for a pedestrian cyclist injury is $105,000. That's a lot of money. Intersection, that's another one, that the average cost is that. Now you may have a small one, but these are the small ones and the super big ones. So overall, you got to think of it in terms of, am I going to blow through this intersection this time, or, or am I going to, do it the right way and risk not having to spend an average of $29,000? The next one is, happens all the time, particularly in South Florida. I mean, I drove down there a lot, but hitting someone in the rear, I was with the safety manager for the Port of Miami tunnel, and hit somebody in the rear going to lunch, so we're all, have that potential. So again, $16,000 is the average cost. People say, well, it's a fender bender, but really it's not. Nothing bends anymore. It just cracks with all the polymers and plastics in the car. And then the next one is cutting an outside swipe, which is, moving over, cutting in front of you, behind. And so when you're thinking in working with your people and they're driving vehicles, in construction, vehicles aren't the primary thing you're doing. You're primarily building something, but you got to have a vehicle to get to and from, the project. So maybe you think about doing something regarding this. These are so expensive because it's not an inanimate telephone pole. There's people in there, and you know how they get out, particularly, I mean, the people that we tapped in right there off of Brickell. I mean, the guy got out immediately, was holding his neck, and, we were going, oh my. So we got information, the police came there, and then the ambulance came and didn't take him off. They started asking a lot of questions. Fortunately, Miami-Dade police are pretty good at trying to sniff out fraud a little bit on some of this. And by the time they were going to take him to the hospital, he said, oh, no, I don't want to go. So again, good information after it happens, and things like that is important. But, again, the Focus for auto liability are these. So think about your messaging at your companies, and what are you saying about that? Does anybody have any questions? I don't want to. Okay. So completed operations. I mean, for general liability, there's two kinds of, there's premises liability, but these are the top. I don't have numbers for these, but every commercial construction insurance company in the country is very concerned about some of this, particularly, completed operations. They call it construction defect, but I think a better term is probably faulty workmanship. And, these can be a variety of things. I was in Nashville this weekend, and my sister just built a brand new house. It was her, she designed it herself. It had these beautiful hickory floors in it. She's been in the home for 3 weeks. They're still trying to put things up. And when I visited her, I left the house, and 10 minutes later, under the sink in the kitchen, the valve that you turn the hot water, adjust, on and off for the hot water side and for the cold water side. The hot water side, the center of the valve just blew off, and just water was rushing, and it went all over the hardwoods. It went into a floor vent for the AC system. About 5 gallons went into there. But, for some of these, particularly, when it involves water later down the road, it can be extremely costly. The next focus for general liability is hitting utilities, and a lot of us have really good dig programs and permits and things like that. But the reason there's so much emphasis on that is because it's one of the focus for general liability. And I know, in certain parts of the country, it's more prevalent than others. New Orleans, South Florida with the hurricanes years ago, things got rerouted so often you can't really rely a lot on the scoping services. You can, but there's always a risk, particularly in your part of the country, for this, because how many times things have been rerouted underground. Injury and property damage outside the project perimeter, it happens. We get into some of these, and I know some of the projects in South Florida, they're on a really tight postage stamp type area, and people park where you tell them not to park, and they walk around the project and things like that. But again, you got to use good signage. You got to make sure some people use connexes for people to walk through that are lit. And you got a ton of connexes in South Florida. But again, you got to keep your eye on that outside the project perimeter thing. Damage when wind kicks up, and with keeping materials weighted down. I was in a project in West Coast, and it was there was a kind of a redo and remodel, and they were storing a lot of the materials on the roof of the different buildings that were there. And there was a daycare for the employees that had a fence and a little playground and all that. And so it was like 4 or 5 o'clock one day, and the daycare had closed, and then a big piece of this sheet metal blew off and then landed right in the middle of where the daycare, inside the daycare outside fence thing. So you just never know when this stuff's going to fly off, and you can't take chances. And particularly in South Florida, you have a lot of pop-up thunderstorms that just happen real quick. I remember a lot of them. So you got to kind of be thinking a lot about keeping material lashed down and keeping it in place, because that's a pretty significant type of loss when it, outside the project perimeter. And then injury and property damage, on site. And that could be things from cranes to, equipment hitting structural members of the building or whatever you're doing. But, when you think of the focus 4, these are the ones for general liability. And again, I would challenge you to think about, what are you inspecting for? Safety is really pretty simple. It's inspecting for things before they happen. It's investigating the things that do happen, trying to figure out how we can prevent it from doing it again. And then we take those 2 things and turn it into continuous improvement on our training program. So, again, a lot of times we don't think of these things, and
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry, Siri. But anyway, we don't think about these until something bad happens. They're sometimes very low frequency, but potentially high cost. So again, from a liability point of view, look at what you're inspecting, and we can help you. I mean, I can help share some, different checklists and things like that you might want to think about. I can share them with Carlos, and he can get those to you. All right. So from a builder's risk, this is another, back to this has an excess insurance component. So the primary is, $1 million or $2 million, but then you get into some of these, utility hits and in some of this construction faulty workmanship, these can get extremely expensive. So again, all the insurance carriers right now, the pricing for excess insurance is going way up, and you can look at your last renewal or the upcoming renewal, and you're going to see, you know, increases in the excess lines of coverage for these particular types of losses. All right, next is builder's risk. And this happens during the course of construction. Liability can happen afterwards, during and afterwards, but this happens during the course of construction. And it's more of a property type insurance, but once the project's completed, the builder's risk coverage leaves, and then the general liability kind of kicks in after that for anything. So, you know, I should have just put one thing here: water, 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 water. And water intrusion, as far as a focus for, that's when it comes in from the outside. You know, when we don't, you know, the building envelope or through, you know, windows and things like that. So water gets in and it can do damage that way. And it's hard to, you know, it's like my sister, they're going to come in and fix the hardwood floors, but they were buckling. And the owner thinks, well, you know, okay, they just dried it out, but did it really do any damage below and everything else? Water leaks are pretty prevalent. You know, you get, you know, you've heard people hitting sprinkler pipes. There's even some contractors that do the testing with water in it versus air first, and we've had some really bad losses like that. But you got to have a water management program. And one thing on a lot of you, since I'm not getting much in the way of questions, but you know, a lot of the builder's risk insurance carriers, they're wanting more, you know, early sensing things, you know, like there's different companies, Tattletale and some of the other ones, that sense water flow and sense water leaks in the building during the construction. And, you know, but what happens is you bid your project, and kind of the way nobody really puts much of that in yet. It's going to, I guarantee you, going forward, you're going to see a lot more of that. But nobody puts much of that into their plans yet. And then the insurance carrier comes along after they've quoted the coverage and says, well, what about, are you going to put this in? Are you going to put that in? And where do you get the money? You know, so I think the insurance industry, and, you know, I work on the broker side of the insurance industry, where we try to help make sure that the insurance carriers are explaining everything that they'd like to see ongoing. So those are some of the kind of questions too, when you're negotiating your insurance coverage. You know, will we be required to, you know, have any kind of water leak, water flow sensing type systems for that? So the next focus for builder's risk is structural collapse. And this could be settlement or a lot of different things. I mean, how you prepare the site, and, you know, all the compaction and everything else. I know when we were doing the tunnel, that's nothing but kind of sand and shale, and you know, as far as the different you know, where the pieces of the tunnel, like, you know, the entrance and all that, had to sit. So structural collapse is another one, or settlement or cracking and things like that falls into that kind of area. And then, you know, fire and explosion. So if there is a bad fire or explosion, that's covered under the builder's risk too. So again, think about, you can expect what you inspect. So if you're currently not looking at things that are best practices to prevent water intrusion and water leaks and things like that, you may be missing the mark a little bit. So again, the focus 4 is right here, and I think it's important for all contracts. And two, when you're negotiating your insurance, and they have an insurance safety professional that usually comes out and talks with you, try to showcase what you're doing in these areas. Whether, well, we haven't had a claim. Well, the insurance company doesn't care if you hadn't had a claim, because it's when you will have a claim, you know. So you got to kind of be proactive and let them know that you understand this is an industry issue, and we're taking good action toward, you know, trying to prevent that.
Hey, Mike,
So,
I got a question for you.
Okay.
Before you move on. Does this fall, of course, this is being asked by one of my specialty contractors, does this fall on the general contractor, since they coordinate the work on new construction?
It depends. Usually you know, well, the general contractor has a contract with the specialty trade contractor. So usually if it's determined that the issue is a result of what the specialty trade contractor did, then their insurance, the specialty trade, would cover it. That's why you have all that contract, like the pyramid. However, if it's a contractor controlled insurance program, then it would fall on the general contractor. If it's an owner controlled insurance program, which there's a lot of those nowadays, it would fall on the owner, because the reason you do an owner controlled insurance program and a contractor controlled insurance program is to wrap the coverage. So in that particular situation, it would fall under the general contractor to respond to that claim. Does that make sense? Okay. And if it doesn't, just put something in the chat, and Carlos will remind me again. So
thank you very much, Mike. He said it absolutely did make sense. Okay, perfect. So, we got to have an iceberg in any safety presentation, right? So, but this one's a little bit about underwriting. So you hear a lot of people talking about, we got a 0.45 mod and a 0.89 total recordable rate. The insurance carrier, that's good, but they don't really put a lot of weight on that, because like the tip of the iceberg is the results, which is this. But the key thing to remember is construction is a dangerous business. If you didn't have any claims or losses, you're still going to have a rate higher than, Starbucks coffee, people working there. So in general, construction's a dangerous business, and in an underwriter's mind, risk equals how much we're going to charge, right? So don't fall into the trap of just saying, oh, we have no losses, or we got a low mod, and that means we're good. You got to get into this stuff down here when you're explaining it. Like, what is the industry data that we have? Absolutely, masonry contractors have a higher, or, structural steel, or, forming contractors, they have the industry data is what the insurance underwriter is looking at. So you got to remember, yeah, we may not have had it, but in their minds, they're just thinking, but when will they? Hopefully not under our coverage terms. So like I put here, and like I mentioned before, on all of this stuff, the focus for these different lines of coverage, you can't say, well, we haven't had a claim. You got to talk about what are we doing to prevent the claim, because it's like I said, it's not that it won't happen, it's just when is it going to happen. And so just as a rule of thumb, just don't get hung up on talking this kind of stuff, because the insurance safety professionals going to be looking more at this risk control stuff right here. Okay, so here's some big numbers, and trying to support what I said before. Liberty Mutual every year puts out, and they're a very large carrier. There's others, Travelers and Zurich and others, but Liberty has been putting out this workplace safety index for construction, and this is for workers' comp. And so they used to put it out just for general industry, which, car dealerships and everything else. And I've worked with Liberty, I've worked with them at one point, but I kept saying, why don't you do it just for construction? Because it doesn't help us to know what, shoe stores at the mall or anything like that. We're contractors, and our losses may be different. And so they do this every year. And, there's, so in billions, it falls to a lower level, like we had on that other thing we were talking about, 2.5 billion, 25% of the total cost. Struck by, object or equipment being hit by object was number 2. So that's kind of one of the OSHA Focus 4s, and also one of the insurance Focus 4s. Overexertion and manual handling, that's number 3, and then number 4 falls on the same level. So from, when you look at the OSHA Focus 4 and this Focus 4, falls to a lower level, is covered by the OSHA Focus 4, right? This one's covered by the OSHA Focus 4. This one is not, Overexertion, lifting and lower is not an OSHA Focus 4, and falls on the same level aren't really either. You could go into the general duty clause and say, yeah, it's so bad in here. But 2 of the top 4 insurance
Focus 4 for workers' compensation aren't even covered by OSHA. I don't know now, we may be getting something into overexertion and ergonomics, hopefully that, you know, won't be a train wreck like it was before, but I just want you to think about that. So if you're not looking at falls on the same level and overexertion stuff, then, you know, you're missing the target. AIG, I mean, all the carriers do something. This is something they put together, you know, and this was 91% of the total cost for construction with all these down here. But see, number 2 is, you know, overexertion, lifting, pulling, falling or slipping is number 3. And then falls on the same level, which both of these are kind of the same. But again, when you're talking, when the insurance safety professional may visit your project, in the back of their mind, they don't really care a lot about, you know, cuts and gloves and stuff like that. They're looking at these big things. Fingers, eyes, all of that are very, very important. But if, you know, and I think by now we should have that under control as an industry, but these other things like this one, and this has to do with access to the building. Look at your projects. How do you get into the building? Or area that you're going to be working? Is there clear access signs that show here's where you go in, here's where you go out? Or is it every opening on the first floor that people just go in and out of over, you know, rough terrain? And people are going to take the closest, you know, pick the least closest distance between 2 points. That was what I was trying to bubble out there. But again, look at this stuff, particularly access to the building. I was on a project in Atlanta and it had 20 floors, and I noticed the cleanup guy dumping stuff into the roll-off dumpster, and you know, that was an issue, just trying to pushed it off in. They had a little plankway built, pushed it off in there, and then had almost get in it to. It was crazy. Rather than have an overhead little something or the other to hook it to, jump it, and then go up. We were waiting for the buck hoist to go up, and I asked him, I said, do you have enough of those? He says, no. And I said, well, how many do you need? He said, 18. So in his mind, why don't we have a rolling trash thing on every floor so that people would put stuff in it? I mean, I was up on one of the floors and the guys had eaten lunch and they had chicken and they just threw chicken bones out on the floor, you know, just like so if you don't have a place to throw it, you won't do it. Another example is like in Disney World, they have people that study when they come through the front park that have drinks or stuff that they brought in, how long do they walk before they throw something either on the ground or something else, and they analyze those distances. And I mean, we could do the same thing with our projects. Watch your people, see where they start to throw stuff down, or where the bin's just popping over at the top. Once the garbage bin or whatever is just over the top, people just start throwing it on the ground. So it's really stupid little things that we could spend a little bit more money on, because I mean, before you look at the average cost on fall to a same level, I mean, the total incurred, that's $400,000. Can we invest a little bit more in receptacles and keeping things off the floor and stuff like that? So, you know, I would almost throw $100 down, and if I had 4 or 5 years of data of your companies that you have, it would probably shake out something close to this. And unfortunately, if you pluck chickens or, you know, work in fast food, it's going to be similar to this. So this was in our top 200 company, 300 million in annual revenues. And, you know, their top one was struck by and against, one of our OSHA 4, but number 2 was overexertion, and then falls from elevations, which again is ladders, stairs. I mean, how many times do you get in a stairway and you can't hardly see because the lighting's so low? And things like off ladders and jumping over stuff to come out of the building, whatever, and then falls on the same level. So down here, you know, I put fumes, dust, gas, caustics, noise down here. And usually those are like the gloves and all that stuff's in this particular one. You know, it's usually, you know, frequency here, but somewhat lower cost. If you divided this 15.5 by 27, the average cost for these claims is not that much. Here's another example that we talked about in the beginning. So we've talked about, here's the top 3, these right here that are 70%, but you get down into here, where is it? Right here. there were 235, and this is, particles in the eyes and noise and heat stress and things like that. But the average cost for these is it's higher frequency but lower cost. And again, I'm not saying your hands and your eyes and all that are important, absolutely, but you may be missing the target on these two here that aren't covered by OSHA. And as you all know, if you've been working in construction safety, when the project is clean and organized, usually your safety results, go right along with that. Again, this was a large project in California, 5-year period, $6 million in total incurred cost. And again, manual handling's number 1, falls to a lower level, number 2, and then falls to on the same level were number 3. And they had this extensive inspection process that they were using, right? And you look at it and, this one wasn't covered in it and this one wasn't covered in it. So again, you're probably missing 60% of the problem from an insurance point of view, just because it's not on your inspection checklist. So, that's, I know I've kind of run through, I was trying to give some pretty good examples. And so at this point, Carlos, can we maybe open up and see if we have any questions?
Absolutely. First one is going to be, if you could, what does the acronym TRIR stand for?
Total recordable incident rate. So that's your OSHA total recordable incident rate that you calculate on your OSHA log.
Fantastic. And folks, please hit us with your questions on the chat feature. So we'd love to have some questions. I mean, it's not always, you don't always have someone like Mike here to ask questions of, so make sure you take advantage. And one more question for you that I had from before. Unique feature of South Florida is the quality of our drivers here. And someone was asking if you had any resources or tips for driver insurance programs. Hold on, let me take a look at that exact question. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you got to enjoy the driving while you were down here working on the tunnel.
Yeah.
Hey, the question is, do you know of any proven tools to improve fleet driver safety, either tools or resources?
Yeah, I mean, there's different training programs, like the National Safety Council has one. I worked with United Parcel Service for like 8 years consulting with them, and they utilize the Smith system of safe driving, which I think is more practical. Used to the Smith system, you had the driver driving, and then you had somebody over in the seat that would observe their driving habits. And you may not want to go to that extent, but periodically I would suggest, if you're the safety person, you don't want to say, I'm getting ready to do your driver test, right? Because then they're freaking out and going. But pick somebody that maybe has had a few minor things, it's just a matter of time when something bigger is going to happen. And just kind of say, hey, can we ride out to this project and spend about an hour with them in the car? Don't talk about their driving, but just kind of observe. Are they following too close? Are they kind of, road ragish? Are they, just some of their habits? And that's one way to help and counsel somebody. I think every company should have some sort of annual driver training program. Again, the National Safety Council has one. The Smith system has one. It's about 60 minutes. And the Smith system also has some modules for like fatigue and some other things, but it's online, it's streaming. They can tell who took it, how they scored on the little quiz, but that would be one, is training them. And then nowadays too, there's a lot of technology, Carlos, that people are putting in vehicles. I mean, believe it or not, backup cameras are a huge piece of technology that are so easy to spec on your vehicle. There's different, GPS kind of trackers. There's things that disable your phone. I still see people driving down the road and on their phone, but the technology in this area is getting really cheaper and sophisticated, and even some of the cameras going forward on some of the equipment. And people think it's Big Brother watching you, but I had a contractor up in the Boston area, and they had a lot of ready mix trucks and other heavy trucks, and it was a union contractor, and they put the cameras in, and the drivers were like, oh gosh, they didn't like it. But more times than not, it saved the driver from being at fault than the other person. I mean, that countless times where, big truck, your name's all over it. Somebody would call in, he sideswiped me, or he ran me off the road. And with the video cameras in the trucks, it actually shows that really didn't happen. My sister in Nashville works for a large trucking company, and on these large tractor trailers now, there's cameras that almost give you a 360 view around it. They're on the West Coast mirrors, they're on the front, they're on the back. And so when somebody calls up and said your truck, got into my lane, she can pull up the video on that and just say, I don't think so. So there's a lot of neat stuff happening in vehicle technology that it starts really with how you spec your vehicles. If you're just looking for the cheapest truck you can get, that's what you're going to get. But you can get a lot of standard features added to some of these vehicles when you purchase them too.
You're going to like this next question. I know the answer, but I'm going to hit you with it anyways. How many steps was it that Disney has from trash can to trash can from your study, sir? Do you know?
I don't know the exact number, but the thing I was trying to is to kind of watch where people are throwing junk. But what is it, Carlos? I have no idea.
Luckily, you're on with a Disney freak here, sir. I believe I actually have a card that says that, and it is 30 steps from trash can to trash can is the average distance on Disney parks.
Well, I'm going to write that down, and if I do this again, I'm going to bring that up. So
I feel so great that I gave you some information that you're actually jotting down. You've made me feel very good for today, sir.
I like that. That's a good, but again, we struggle with measurable things, and when you say, okay, on a project, how many garbage cans do you need on a 20-floor building, and we struggle with it. But anyway, that's good, and it's very measurable, and you can hold people accountable for that. So.
All right, I got another question for you. Do you think OSHA will integrate manual handling into their Focus 4 in the future?
It's possible, but the Focus 4, in my understanding, are fatalities, and it's hard to get a fatality, picking up a box unless it's, explodes or something. But I think the Focus 4 will always kind of remain fatal type things. But you never know. With the new administration, as many of you know, they tried to push the ergonomic standard, what was it, 15 or 20 years ago, and it failed because really it's hard to hold. It's, for fall protection, you can see, is there an anchorage point? Is there a lanyard? Is, whatever. Struck by, how's the trench protected? How are things held up? Electrocution, lockout, things like that. But I think in ergonomics and overexertion stuff, it's very hard to pin that stuff down. So I don't believe it will be, Carlos.
Okay. And so here's an interesting comment, because I believe we had discussed this in one of our previous sessions. Muscle injuries have been hard to manage. Have you seen that companies doing morning stretching exercises, has that helped? Or do you have any data on morning stretching?
I participated in one yesterday morning at 7 a.m. and I was sitting there and watching the people do it. And, I remember when it first, started, people were just going, we got to do it. But this particular project, they were doing it, I was stretching. The older you get, the more, stiff you get. And, it felt good to me. The problem, I think, with that, Carlos, is that a lot of people look at stretch and flex as the cure, and it's a whole process. It's material management. It's moving too much material into the area, kind of the lean concepts, and, piling it up and handling it 2 or 3 times. It's amazing when you're at projects and here comes the guy up with a delivery, right? Everybody stops everything to get the guy unloaded. If he sits there a little longer, it doesn't cost you anymore. So to me, I always tease people and say, hey, you unload that guy so he can go deliver material quicker to your competition down the road. But it's a lot of things. It's keeping things off the floor. It's, having work stands. Yesterday, I was observing they were testing, you know, you have to test so many bolts that go into the steel structure, you know, for quality, and they had it set up on uh, the you know, forks of a all-terrain forklift versus having a bench. And we sat there and talked to him and said, "Where's your workbench?" It's like, and then other people, you come in and you see it all the time, cutting you know, metal studs, and they'll be on their hands and knees on the floor with a cutoff saw. Why not bring a stand? Why not keep the more you can keep what you're doing and
Hey,
work.
Mike, I lost your audio there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I don't know if you might have been accidentally muted or if you may have muted yourself.
Yeah, let me see. Hang on. Let me get out of this full screen. I'm sorry.
So,
All right, here.
all right.
Can you hear me now?
You with us, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. And it shows on my, I'm here. Let's see. I don't know. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I got you, Mike. That was on my end. My apologies.
Okay. So, but you know, again, it's, you just got to kind of look at it more holistic. You know, stretching is absolutely important. There's new theories nowadays too, that a lot of people say in the morning, you need to do warm-ups and then do your actual stretching at around lunchtime, because, you know, your muscles, I mean, yesterday morning it was 40 degrees here and your muscles are kind of cold. It's like a steak when you take it out of the refrigerator. You know, when you first take it out, it's a little stiffer, but after it sits on the counter, the muscle warms up. So a lot of companies are saying now that we need to do some general warm-ups in the morning and then do stretching later in the day. And then there's other things too, like using a tool. The Milwaukee tool guy may be interested in this, but when you're using a hand tool, you know, whatever, drill or whatever, you know, and you're using it over and over and over, you can use the opposite. So you're using your hand forcefully that way, and then you do a stretch that's the opposite of the way you were holding the tool, and that gives you some relief and better, less muscle fatigue on that too. So I've got some pretty good stuff on that, and if you want me to send it to you, Carlos, some good pictures about what I'm talking about, and you can share it with the people on the call and your members. But there's to answer your question, it's got to be a whole kind of system thing that you look at when it comes to that. But one of the biggest things is, again, there's no blood with these. And if somebody comes up to you on Friday and he's been working hard, you know, or she, and he says, "Yeah, that's a tough week, but we got it done, boss, you know, but God, my shoulder's a little tight, so I'm just going to go home and, you know, sit in the hot tub or whatever you do, and maybe it'll be later." And those are the ones that come back on claims reviews 3 weeks later, and they come back and say, "Hey, Carlos, remember I told you about my shoulder?" And you're going like, "I don't remember anything," you know, and then they've got time to plan it. So on your projects, if somebody mentions anything about knees, elbows, shoulders, don't, you know, pull your machine gun out, but just say, "Hey, okay, where were you? Can you give me a little more information? You know, who was around? What were you doing exactly?" And when you start asking some of those initial questions, you have to do a full-fledged accident investigation. But the word spreads around the project, because people know when nobody cares, you know, they can get over on you and do that kind of stuff and get, you know, somebody to help them file a lawsuit and all of that. And there's some of that, as you all know, in South Florida that you got to kind of be careful about. So just get some basic information. Whenever they come up and say, "Carlos, I did this," they're putting you on notice. And that's kind of a pretty good clue that if they are going to pull something, that they need to put you on notice, and they come back later when you've forgotten everything.
Mike, thank you so much. Could you put your contact information up there in case folks want to reach out? There you go.
Okay. So, you know, that's my cell phone number. I don't care if you're a client or not a client. If you got a question, I'll try to help you. I'm in this for, you know, to help change the industry, you know, and I think by networking and doing a lot of the things and participating in the AGC and the other South Florida, what's the other group down there that meets frequently at the university? I know when I was there, it was there was another safety group down there too, where people always say, how do we get to the next level? And I say, network with other people, you know. So anyway, that's my number and my website, and not website, but my email. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. And thanks, Carlos, for inviting me to speak to everybody today.
Oh, Mike, absolutely. We actually, some of the senior members of our group, you know who you are. I'm not calling you senior folks out. We're excited when they heard that we were bringing you on. There's like, Mike's a great guy. Mike's got great information. And your affiliation with AGC of America is also something that was important to us. So, you know, thank you very much for coming on today. We appreciate it. And we're very excited to have you.
You're welcome. Have a great day, guys.
And I believe our safety committee is making plans to have another member of your team on for that presentation that you all did to National regarding suicide within the construction industry. So, you know, when we discussed that, that was alarming. And if you guys out there, if that's something that you would like for us to come in and discuss, please let us know. You all have my email address out there. Let me know what you're interested in hearing. So again, Mike, thank you very much.
Welcome.
And yeah, speaking of AGC of America, next month, we're actually going to have Kevin Cannon on. And Kevin's going to be discussing Kevin is going to be discussing what AGC of America is doing right now, working with OSHA and the Biden administration, and what they see coming from the federal government now that we are under a new presidential administration. So that's going to be a lot of good information for you all to go ahead and project and see what you maybe see coming from OSHA in the next year or few years rather. So make sure you join us for that. You'll see that information coming out in a follow-up email after this session. This session would also be going up on our YouTube page. So again, youtube.com, look for the South Florida AGC, subscribe, and make sure you like those videos when you see them. So again, thanks to Mike and the entire team at Willis Towers Watson. Thank you to our title sponsor, Milwaukee Tools. Thank you to Kelly Cronenberg, Cedric and Tim out there. Thank you guys very much for your help as always. The technical difficulties are always on my end, so I apologize today. But it was good to see that everybody was awake and watching, because I got everybody, hey, Mike's working on my end, so thank you. I also want to thank Safe Right Solutions for hosting us today, and to the members of our safety committee. Harass them too. Let them know what you want to see. Let them know what's working and not working. And that's Deborah Hampton, Ian Schwartz, Jose Bobadilla, Mark Leon, Enrique Sequeira, and Brian Cardona. There's a lot going on at the South Florida AGC over the next couple of months, not just our safety sessions. We do have a couple of in-person events, and you can check all of that out at sfagc.org. One more time, sfagc.org. Just click on the events tab. Thank you all very much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you all next month, and hopefully maybe even before that. Have a great day, folks. Thank you.